The candles flickered across our dining room table like tiny searchlights, exposing every crack in Derek's performance. He'd arranged the silverware with military precision, uncorked an expensive Cabernet, and even picked up fresh flowers. Yellow roses, which I'd mentioned loving exactly once, 15 years ago. I'm Valerie, and I've spent 20 years learning to read my husband's tells. Tonight, they're screaming at me. You outdid yourself, I said, watching him serve the pasta with practiced grace. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Another tell. Can't a man surprise his wife? Derek's voice carried that smooth, practiced tone he usually reserved for his clients. You've been working so hard lately. You deserve this. I took a careful sip of wine, buying time. Where's Ella? At Chelsea's for a study group. I thought we could use some alone time. The pasta was perfectly al dente, probably from that expensive Italian place downtown. Derek never cooked. He claimed he didn't have the patience for it, just like he didn't have the patience for parent-teacher conferences or Ella's violin recitals. How thoughtful, I said, twirling the pasta around my fork. Especially since you've been so busy with the new project. How's that going? His hand tightened slightly around his wine glass. Brilliantly. We're ahead of schedule, actually. The client's thrilled. Lie number 1. I'd seen the emails he'd forgotten to close on his laptop last night. The project was hemorrhaging money, and the client was threatening to pull out. That's wonderful, I smiled, matching his performance. And Ryan's team is handling everything well. A microscopic pause. Ryan's been invaluable. Lie number 2. Ryan Collins, my best friend Maggie's husband, had quit the project 3 weeks ago. Derek hadn't told me why. We should have them over for dinner soon, I suggested, watching his reaction. It's been ages since we've seen them. They're probably busy, he deflected, reaching for the wine bottle. More? I covered my glass with my hand. I'm good. Actually, I got an interesting call today. Derek's shoulders tensed slightly as he poured himself another generous glass. Oh? From the bank. I kept my voice light, casual. There seems to be some confusion about our joint account. Apparently there was a rather large withdrawal last week. The candlelight caught the sheen of sweat forming on his upper lip. Must be a mistake. I'll look into it tomorrow. Lie number 3. The biggest one yet. That's what I thought at first, I continued. But then I remembered something odd. Last month, when I was organising the home office, I found a receipt from a jewellery store. Cartier. Quite expensive. Derek's smile froze. Valerie. Our anniversary isn't for months, I cut in, and my birthday was last week. You got me a cookbook, remember? The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. Outside, a car alarm went off, its wailing perfectly matching the moment. I can explain, he started, but I was already standing up, my napkin falling to the floor. Save it, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I already called Maggie. She told me everything. The colour drained from his face. What exactly did she tell you? Enough. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I'm staying at her place tonight. Don't call me, don't try to explain. And Derek? I paused at the doorway, looking back at the elaborate dinner scene he'd staged. Yellow roses are my mother's favourite, not mine. I hate them. Always have. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. Did you tell him? I typed back. Phase 1 complete. Your turn. The engine purred to life, and I caught a glimpse of Derek in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway with his perfect dinner falling apart behind him. He had no idea what was coming next. Neither did I, really. But for the first time in years, I felt absolutely certain about one thing. By the time this was over, he'd wish he'd never underestimated me. Maggie's guest room felt like a confessional booth at 3 in the morning. I sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through years of Derek's financial records on my laptop while she paced, her wine glass making dangerous circles in the air. He's been moving money around for months, I said, pointing to a series of transactions. Small amounts at first, then bigger. Always on days when Ella had away games or competitions. The bastard used your daughter's schedule as cover. Maggie stopped pacing, her face hardening. What about the Cartier receipt? My phone buzzed. Ella's name lit up the screen. Mom, Dad's being weird. He keeps asking where you are but won't let me call you. You okay? I typed back quickly. Everything's fine, honey. Stay at Chelsea's tonight. Love you. Valerie? Maggie's voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize. There's something you need to know about Ryan's resignation. Before she could continue, her front door slammed. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Maggie! Ryan's voice boomed through the house. Your phone's been off. Derek's looking for... He burst into the room, freezing when he saw me. Valerie! Shit! Ryan, I said, closing my laptop. Perfect timing. Want to tell me why you really quit Derek's project? He exchanged a loaded look with Maggie. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. Ryan ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Derek's been cooking the books for years. The tech consulting. It's a front. He's been moving money for some very dangerous people. Money laundering? The words felt foreign in my mouth. Worse, Maggie cut in. He's been stealing from his clients, setting up fake projects, skimming millions. Ryan found out and threatened to expose him. That's when Derek showed me what he had on me, Ryan said quietly. Old mistakes. Things that could destroy my career, my marriage. He looked at Maggie. Our life. My phone buzzed again. Derek, come home. We can fix this. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. He's threatening you. Maggie moved closer to me, reading over my shoulder. No, I said, a cold clarity washing over me. He's threatening Ella. Ryan's face darkened. He wouldn't. You don't know him like I do, I cut in, already gathering my things. 20 years of marriage and I never saw it. The real him, until now. Where are you going? Maggie grabbed my arm. To get my daughter. You can't, Ryan blocked the doorway. Derek's got people watching Chelsea's house. They followed you here. The room tilted slightly. What people? The kind you don't want to meet, he said grimly. Listen, there's something else. The Cartier receipt? It wasn't for jewelry. Maggie shot him a warning look, but he continued. It was for a safety deposit box. Whatever's in there, it's what Derek's really afraid of losing. Not you, not Ella. Something worth killing for. My phone buzzed one final time. Derek again. Found it, Val. Should have changed your passwords. See you soon. The blood drained from my face. My laptop. The encrypted folder labelled insurance that I'd been collecting for months. Every transaction, every secret meeting, every lie carefully documented. He's bluffing, I said, but my hands shook as I tried to remotely access my cloud storage. Access denied. No, no, no. I frantically typed in another password, then another. Access denied. Access denied. Valerie, Maggie whispered, what exactly did you have in that folder? Everything, I breathed. And now? A car door slammed outside. Through the window I caught the gleam of Derek's BMW in the streetlight. He stepped out, adjusting his perfect suit, that familiar charming smile playing on his lips as he looked up at the window. Back door, Ryan commanded, already moving. Now! But I stood my ground, watching Derek approach the house. 20 years of manipulation, of careful lies and calculated affection, all leading to this moment. He thought he had me cornered, trapped by his threats and his power. What he didn't know was that the folder he'd found wasn't my only insurance policy. The real evidence was still safely hidden, waiting in a Cartier safety deposit box, one purchased with his own money, through his own careful schemes. I picked up my phone and typed one last message. Game on. The safety deposit box key felt impossibly heavy in my coat pocket as I walked through Cartier's polished doors. 3 security cameras tracked my movement. I wondered which ones Derek had already accessed. Mrs. Thompson. The manager's smile was practiced perfection. Your husband called ahead, said you might be stopping by. Of course he did. I matched her smile with equal precision. How thoughtful of him. She led me to the vault area, her heels clicking against marble floors. He mentioned you might need assistance accessing your box. Something about a misplaced key? Actually, I pulled out the key, watching her expression shift. I have it right here. The manager's smile flickered. She touched her earpiece, murmuring something I couldn't catch. One moment, please. My phone vibrated. Maggie. Derek's men just left Chelsea's. Ella's safe. Ryan's with her. Before I could respond, another message flashed. Derek. Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup key? The manager returned with a security guard. Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid there's been a problem with your box authorization. Has there? I kept my voice steady. That's interesting considering I'm the only authorized user. Your husband has no legal access, I cut in, pulling out a document. As you can see, this box was registered solely in my name. Any attempt to access it without my presence would be illegal. The manager's eyes darted between me and the paper. Another guard appeared by the vault entrance. My phone buzzed again. Derek. Check the news. I pulled up a financial news site. My stomach dropped. The headline screamed, Tech consultant Derek Thompson named in federal investigation. Below it, my own name appeared as a person of interest. Mrs. Thompson? The manager was watching me carefully. Is everything all right? Perfect, I said, though my hands had started to shake. The box, please. She hesitated, then nodded to the guards. They escorted us into the vault, where she inserted her master key alongside mine. The box slid out with a whisper of metal on metal. Inside lay a single USB drive and a folder of documents, copies of everything Derek thought he'd deleted from my cloud storage, plus something he didn't know I had. Recordings of his late-night phone calls, the ones he made from his home office when he thought I was sleeping. My phone lit up again. Maggie. Ryan just told me everything. About Derek. About what really happened 5 years ago. Val, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. The manager cleared her throat. Mrs. Thompson, we have another client waiting. I tucked the items into my bag, my mind racing. What did Maggie mean? What happened 5 years ago? Outside Cartier, a black SUV idled across the street. One of Derek's watchdogs, no doubt. I pulled out my phone and called the one number I'd been avoiding. Mom, Ella answered on the first ring. What's going on? Dad's face is all over the news, and these men were watching Chelsea's house and... Listen carefully, I cut in. Stay with Ryan. Don't tell anyone where you are. Not even Maggie. Especially not Maggie. Mom, you're scaring me. I know, honey. I'm scared too. My voice cracked. But I'm going to fix this. All of it. How? The SUV's engine rumbled to life. By doing what I should have done 5 years ago when I first suspected something was wrong, I'm going to make your father tell the truth. About what? Another text from Derek appeared. Last chance, Val. Meet me at the house in 1 hour. Alone. Or the FBI gets proof of your involvement. Mom? I watched the SUV pull away from the curb, tracking my movements. About everything, sweetheart. About the money laundering, about Ryan's resignation, and about what really happened to your Aunt Sarah. The line went silent. Then, barely a whisper. Dad said Aunt Sarah moved to Europe. No, honey. I stepped into a taxi, giving the driver our home address. That's just what he wanted everyone to believe. My phone buzzed one final time. An unknown number. Mrs. Thompson, this is Special Agent Carter with the FBI. We need to discuss your husband's activities and a missing person case from 2018. Please call immediately. The taxi merged into traffic, carrying me toward a confrontation 20 years in the making. Derek thought he was forcing my hand, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd learned all my best moves from him, and unlike my husband, I never played a card without knowing exactly how the game would end. The taxi crawled through evening traffic while I played Ryan's voicemail for the 3rd time. Sarah didn't leave for Europe. She found something in Derek's files. Something about offshore accounts and a company called Nexus Solutions. The night before she disappeared, she called me. Said she needed to meet. She never showed. I clicked off the phone as we pulled up to my house. Derek's BMW sat in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar silver Audi. Through the living room window, I caught glimpses of moving shadows. Keep the meter running, I told the driver. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Derek stood by the fireplace, drinking scotch with a man I'd never seen before. Both turned as I entered. There she is, Derek smiled, all warmth and charm. Agent Carter, this is my wife, Valerie. The FBI agent didn't smile back. Mrs. Thompson, we were just discussing your sister-in-law's European adventure. I set my bag down carefully, keeping the USB drive close. Were you? Fascinating story, Carter continued. She apparently moved to Brussels in 2018. No forwarding address, no social media presence, not even a passport record. It's almost like she vanished into thin air. People do that sometimes, Derek said smoothly. Start fresh, leave everything behind. Not Sarah, I countered, watching Derek's fingers tighten around his glass. She wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to her daughter. Emma still asks about her. Carter's eyebrows rose slightly. I wasn't aware Sarah had a child. Ex-husband's custody, Derek cut in quickly. Messy divorce, another reason she left. My phone buzzed. Maggie. Don't trust Ryan. He's not telling you everything about Sarah. Mrs. Thompson. Carter set down his drink. Your husband claims you handled all the family's financial documentation, including transfers to Nexus Solutions. Derek's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. Val's always been better with numbers than me. Actually, I moved toward my laptop on the coffee table. I have some documentation you might find interesting, Agent Carter. About Nexus, about Sarah, and about what really happened to those missing client funds. Valerie. Derek's voice carried a warning. Think about Ella. I am thinking about Ella. I opened my laptop, typing in the password. I'm thinking about how she deserves to know what happened to her aunt. The screen remained black. I tried again. Nothing. Looking for this, Derek held up a small circuit board. Amazing what you can learn about computers when you're married to someone in tech. Like how to remove a hard drive. Carter watched our exchange with increasing interest. Mrs. Thompson, if you're attempting to cooperate— She's not, Derek interrupted. Are you, Val? Because that would mean admitting your own involvement. The transfers you authorized, the accounts you helped manage. Sarah figured it out, didn't she? That's why she came to you first. My blood ran cold. What? Oh, did Ryan not mention that part? Derek's smile turned cruel. Sarah reached out to you before she disappeared, left you a message about meeting at that little cafe you both loved. But you never showed up, did you? Too busy covering our tracks. That's a lie, but my voice shook. I never got any message. Check your old voicemails, Derek suggested. The ones from that phone you lost right after Sarah vanished. The one I replaced as an anniversary gift. The room spun slightly. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Agent Carter, I started, but he was already pulling out handcuffs. Valerie Thompson. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding the disappearance of Sarah Thompson and the misappropriation of client funds through Nexus Solutions. My phone buzzed one final time. Ryan. Found Sarah's real message. It wasn't meant for you. She was trying to warn Maggie about Derek, about what he did to her husband. The pieces clicked into place. Maggie's strange behavior, Ryan's guilt, Derek's perfect alibi. All this time, I'd been looking at the wrong puzzle. Agent Carter, I said quietly, before you arrest anyone, you might want to ask my husband about Thomas Collins. Derek's glass shattered on the floor. Maggie's first husband, I continued, watching the colour drain from Derek's face. The one who died in that convenient car accident the same week Sarah disappeared. The one whose life insurance policy listed Nexus Solutions as the beneficiary. Carter's hand moved to his weapon. Mr. Thompson? But Derek was already running for the back door, leaving me standing in the wreckage of our lives, finally seeing the full picture of his betrayal. And my own unwitting role in it. Agent Carter's team swarmed the house while I sat in Maggie's kitchen, watching her hands shake as she poured coffee. The morning news played silently on her tablet. Tech executives still at large. FBI expands search. You should have told me about Thomas, I said quietly. Maggie's cup clattered against the counter. I couldn't. Derek, he had evidence that Thomas's death wasn't an accident, evidence that would have implicated Ryan. And Sarah found out. She was always too clever. Maggie's voice cracked. She traced the insurance payout to Nexus, then connected it to Thomas's brake lines being cut. She thought she was protecting me by confronting Derek first. My phone lit up. Unknown number. Storage Unit 247, midnight. Come alone if you want to know the truth. D. He's desperate, Ryan said from the doorway, making us both jump. The FBI found Thomas's real autopsy report this morning. Derek's running out of options. And allies, I added, watching Maggie carefully. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Val, she whispered, there's something else, about the night Sarah disappeared. Before she could continue, my phone rang. Ella. Mum? There's someone at Chelsea's house. They say they're from Dad's office, but... The line went dead. Ryan was already grabbing his keys. I'll get her. No. I stood up, my voice steadier than I felt. You've both done enough. This ends tonight. Valerie, wait! Maggie caught my arm. The storage unit. It's where Derek kept everything. All the evidence, including what really happened to Sarah. But he's not alone. There are others involved, powerful people who... Who killed your husband? I pulled away. Or who helped cover it up? Her face crumpled. Both. I checked my watch. 8 hours until midnight. 8 hours to decide who to trust, how to protect Ella, and whether revenge was worth the cost. My phone buzzed again. Agent Carter. Mrs. Thompson, we found something in your sister-in-law's old apartment. Something about you. The message included a photo, a letter in Sarah's handwriting, dated the day before she vanished. My hands trembled as I read, Val, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Derek didn't just kill Thomas, he's been eliminating anyone who threatens his operation. The evidence is in Storage Unit 247, but be careful. Maggie isn't who you think she is. She and Derek. The rest was torn off. I need to go, I said, already moving toward the door. Where? Ryan stepped in my path. To get my daughter, then to finish what Sarah started. You can't trust Derek, Maggie pleaded. I don't. I turned back, seeing them both clearly for the first time. But I trusted you, and look where that got us. My phone chimed one last time. Derek. Ella's safe. For now. Midnight. Come alone, or Sarah won't be the only sister you lose. I walked out of Maggie's house, leaving behind the coffee, the excuses, and any illusion of friendship. In my purse, the USB drive from the safety deposit box felt like a loaded gun. On it was everything Sarah had discovered, about Thomas, about Nexus, about Derek's entire operation. What Derek didn't know was that I'd already sent copies to every major news outlet and federal agency. They would go public at 12:01 a.m., 1 minute after our midnight meeting. The question wasn't whether Derek would fall. That was inevitable now. The question was how many people he'd take down with him, and whether Ella and I would survive the collapse. I got into my car, checking the glove compartment where Sarah's old gun still lay hidden. She'd given it to me years ago, saying sometimes protection meant being willing to pull the trigger. I hadn't understood then. I did now. As I pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Maggie in her window, phone pressed to her ear. Warning Derek? Warning Ryan? It didn't matter anymore. In 8 hours, everyone's true face would be revealed, including mine. I just hoped Ella would forgive me for what I had to do next. Storage Unit 247 loomed before me, its metal door reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. 11:58 p.m. Sarah's gun pressed against my lower back, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The lock clicked open. Inside, Derek stood next to a bound figure in a chair. Ella, head bowed, shoulders shaking. Right on time, Derek said, closing the door behind me. Always so punctual, Val. So predictable. Let her go. Show me the USB drive first. I pulled it from my pocket, holding it up. Show me she's okay. Derek yanked the hood off Ella's head. She blinked in the harsh light, a bruise darkening her cheek. Our eyes met, and she tried to speak through her gag. You hit our daughter. My voice came out flat, deadly. Actually, a familiar voice said behind me. I did. Maggie stepped out of the shadows holding a gun. Sorry about that, Val. She struggled. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. Let me guess. You're the one who killed Sarah too? No, Derek laughed softly. That was all me. Sarah made the mistake of threatening to expose everything: the money laundering, Thomas's murder, the offshore accounts. I couldn't let that happen. And Thomas? That was me, Maggie said quietly. He found out about Derek and me, about how long we'd been together. He had to go. The pieces clicked into place. The long business trips, the late-night calls, the way Derek always seemed to know Maggie's schedule. 20 years, I said, understanding finally dawning. You've been playing me for 20 years. Longer, Derek admitted. Since college, Maggie and I had the perfect plan. Marry other people, build our alibis, run our operation through legitimate businesses. It worked beautifully until Sarah got suspicious. My phone vibrated. 12 Akaos a.m. 1 minute until everything went public. The USB, Derek demanded, pressing a gun to Ella's temple. I held it out, hands steady. Take it. Derek grabbed it, tossing it to Maggie. Check it. While Maggie plugged it into her laptop, I inched closer to Ella. Just a few more seconds. It's encrypted, Maggie frowned. The password, Derek ordered. Sarah, I said softly. The password is Sarah. Maggie typed it in. Her face went pale. Derek, it's empty. 12:01 a.m. My phone buzzed again. Now, I said, check the news. Derek's phone chimed, then Maggie's, then the sound of police sirens outside. What did you do? Derek's face contorted. I sent everything to the press, the FBI, everyone. I moved between him and Ella. Sarah taught me well. Always keep backups. You're bluffing, Maggie said, but her hands shook as she checked her phone. Breaking news. Tech scandal exposed. Multiple murders linked to Nexus Solutions. Derek lunged for me, but I was ready. Sarah's gun felt natural in my hands as I pulled it from my waistband. Don't, I warned. The storage unit door burst open. FBI agents poured in, Agent Carter leading them. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Everything happened at once. Maggie fired. I fired back. Derek tried to run. The air filled with gunshots and screams. When the chaos cleared, Maggie lay clutching her shoulder. Derek was in handcuffs, and I held Ella as she sobbed into my chest. Mom, she choked out, I heard everything. About Aunt Sarah, about... I know, baby. I stroked her hair, avoiding the bruise on her cheek. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Carter approached. We need to take your statement. I nodded, still holding Ella. As they led Derek past us, he paused. You really think this is over? He sneered. You have no idea how deep this goes. Who else is involved? You've just signed our daughter's death warrant. No, I said, watching his smug expression falter. I've just guaranteed her safety, because now everyone knows exactly what happens to people who threaten my family. They took him away, but his words echoed in my head. He was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Somewhere out there, more players waited in the shadows, more secrets threatened to surface. But for now, I held my daughter and watched the sunrise through the storage unit's small window, understanding finally that revenge wasn't about winning. It was about surviving. The interrogation room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Derek's face as I sat across from him. 3 days since the storage unit showdown, and his perfect facade had finally cracked. You're not here to press charges, he said, studying me. So why come? I placed Sarah's old phone on the metal table between us. Because of this. His eyes flickered with recognition. Where did you... Ryan found it, in Maggie's safety deposit box, the one you helped her set up after Sarah disappeared. I pressed play on the last voicemail. Sarah's voice filled the room. Maggie, I know about the transfers. About Thomas. Derek's planning something big and you're next. Meet me at... I stopped the recording. She wasn't warning me that night. She was trying to save your girlfriend's life. And now Maggie's in custody anyway. Derek leaned back, chains rattling. Ironic, isn't it? Where's Sarah's body? His smile didn't reach his eyes. You know I can't tell you that. Can't, or won't. I slid a document across the table. Your empire's falling apart, Derek. Your clients are turning on you. But I can help. Help? He laughed. You destroyed everything. No, I exposed everything. There's a difference. I tapped the document. This is a deal from the FBI. Full immunity in exchange for names. All of them. You really think I'd... Ella's college fund, I cut in. The offshore account in her name. The one you thought I didn't know about. Sign this, and it stays hidden. His facade cracked further. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone, showing him the account details. $20 million, Derek. Blood money from every deal, every murder, every betrayal. Sign the deal, or I send this to Agent Carter right now. You'd steal from your own daughter. I'd protect her from becoming an accessory to murder. My finger hovered over the send button. Your choice. Derek stared at the document, then at me. You've changed. No, I've woken up. I stood, gathering my things. You have until midnight to decide. After that, Ella loses everything. Just like Sarah's daughter did. Wait. His chains clinked as he reached for the pen. There's something you should know first, about Ryan. Save it. I already know he was your inside man at the FBI. I watched his expression shift. Why do you think he's in the next room right now, making his own deal? You played us all, Derek whispered, realization dawning. I learned from the best. I pushed the pen closer. Now sign. As Derek scrawled his signature, a knock came at the door. Agent Carter entered with Ryan in handcuffs. It's done, Ryan said. All of it. The accounts, the bodies, everything. Including Sarah? I asked quietly. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Including Sarah. Derek lunged across the table, but the chains held him back. You treacherous. Careful, I warned. Your immunity deal doesn't cover new charges. You think this is over? Derek snarled. You think you've won? There are still people out there, people who just lost everything, I finished. Check your phone. Oh, wait. You can't. But if you could, you'd see that every name Ryan just gave us is already in custody. Your safety net is gone. The truth hit him like a physical blow. For the first time in 20 years, I saw real fear in his eyes. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Carter said, we're ready for Sarah's location. I turned to leave, but Derek called after me. How long? How long what? How long have you been planning this? Working with the FBI? Setting us all up? I paused at the door, thinking of Sarah's last message, of Ella's bruised face, of 20 years of lies. Since the moment you forgot the most important thing about me. Which is? I'm not just your wife, Derek. I'm also a sister, and sisters don't abandon each other. I looked back one last time. Not even after death. The door closed on Derek's face, leaving him alone with his choices, his consequences, and the ghost of every life he'd destroyed in his pursuit of power. Outside, Ella waited with Agent Carter, clutching Sarah's old diary. Did he sign? He did. I took her hand. Ready to say goodbye to Aunt Sarah? She nodded, tears in her eyes. Ready. Together we walked toward the waiting cars, toward closure, toward whatever came next in our story of survival and justice. Behind us, Derek's empire crumbled to dust. The autumn wind scattered leaves across Sarah's newly placed headstone. After 5 years, we'd finally brought her home. Ella knelt beside the grave, arranging fresh flowers while I watched from a few steps back, giving her space to say goodbye. She would have loved these, Ella said, touching the yellow roses. Sarah's favourite, not mine. Another lie Derek had gotten wrong. My phone buzzed. Agent Carter. Derek's sentencing tomorrow. Still don't want to attend. I typed back, no need. We've moved on. The media circus around Derek's empire had finally quieted. Maggie's testimony had sealed his fate, along with dozens of others. Ryan's deal had saved him from the worst charges, but his career was over. Justice, or something close to it. Mom? Ella stood, brushing dirt from her knees. I found this in Aunt Sarah's diary. It's for you. She handed me a weathered envelope. Inside was a key and a note in Sarah's familiar scrawl. For when it's over, Storage Unit 248. My hands trembled. All this time, the truth had been next door to Derek's unit. "Should we go?" Ella asked. The storage facility looked different in daylight. Unit 248's lock clicked open easily, revealing a small space filled with cardboard boxes, each one labelled meticulously, evidence. Photos. Emma's future. "Emma?" Ella picked up a framed picture. "Sarah's daughter. Your cousin." I opened the first box, finding stacks of documents. Sarah was gathering evidence against Derek long before she disappeared. She knew he'd come after her eventually. So she left a backup plan. She left insurance. I lifted out a USB drive labelled everything. For Emma. For us. For everyone Derek hurt. Ella's phone chimed. She checked it, then showed me the screen. A news alert. Breaking, tech mogul Derek Thompson found dead in cell hours before sentencing. My hands didn't shake this time. Suicide? They're investigating. Ella watched me carefully. "Are you okay?" I thought about Derek's last words to me during our final visit yesterday. "You'll never know everything, Val. Some secrets stay buried." Now he'd buried them permanently. "Mom?" Ella touched my arm. "There's something else in that box." Beneath the documents lay a sealed letter addressed to Emma, and beneath that, a photo I'd never seen before. Sarah at her desk, pregnant with Emma, smiling at the camera. On the back, she'd written, "Some fights choose us. The trick isn't winning, it's knowing when to stop." "What do we do now?" Ella asked. I picked up Emma's letter. "We find your cousin. Tell her everything. Let her decide what to do with Sarah's insurance policy. And the rest?" I looked at the boxes of evidence, at 5 years of Sarah's meticulous planning, at all the secrets that had died with Derek. "We burn it." Sarah didn't want revenge. She wanted protection. For Emma, for you, for everyone these secrets could still hurt. But Derek got what he deserved. I pulled out my lighter. Sometimes justice isn't about exposing everything. Sometimes it's about knowing which truths to bury and which ones to set free. We worked in silence, burning each document, each photo, each piece of evidence Sarah had gathered. As the last box emptied, Ella spoke quietly. "Aunt Sarah knew, didn't she, that it would end like this? She knew Derek better than anyone." I pocketed Emma's letter. "She knew the only way to truly stop him was to let him destroy himself." The final photo curled in the flames. Derek and Maggie at a college party, young and unguarded, their future crimes still unwritten. As it burned, my phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. "Mom, this is Emma. Agent Carter gave me your number. Can we meet?" Ella read the message over my shoulder. "Ready?" I thought about Sarah's words. Some fights choose us. But maybe the real choice comes after, in how we end them, in what we keep and what we let go, in how we rebuild from the ashes of revenge. "Ready," I said, taking Ella's hand. We left the storage unit empty, carrying only Emma's letter and the weight of choices yet to come. Behind us, the last embers of Derek's secrets turned to ash, and ahead, the autumn wind scattered leaves like memories across our path home.
I'm Ellie, and it was just my dad, my mom, and me living in a sprawling old house that had more rooms than I could bother counting. It was a peaceful home, the kind where laughter echoed through the corridors and the air was always filled with the sweet aroma of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. My mother was the soul of our home. Each morning, she'd wake up singing, her melodious voice carrying up the stairs, "Ellie, rise and shine, sweetheart." I would reluctantly drag myself out of bed, grumbling like the typical teenager I was. However, her bright smile and the warm pancakes waiting downstairs made getting up early worthwhile. My dad was the fun one, always ready with a joke to lighten the mood or a story from his youth. When I was your age, I thought I could conquer the world with just a guitar and a bad haircut, he'd say, and we'd all laugh together. He might not have conquered the world with his music, but he managed quite well with a shoe business and sensible approach. Life was wonderful, more than wonderful actually, it was perfect. But as the old saying goes, all good things must come to an end. The change came when my mom fell ill. It started subtly, but our little paradise began to disintegrate the day she sat us down in the living room, the TV on, but forgotten, and said with a steady voice though her eyes revealed her fear, "I have some tough news. Cancer." That word struck me like a heavyweight. Dad reached for her hand, and they exchanged a look, a silent vow to face this challenge together. The following months were a blur of hospitals and treatments. Mom lost her hair but never her spirit, joking about how much she'd save on shampoo, trying to keep us from worrying. But I saw the hidden tears and heard the strain in Dad's hushed late-night worries. The day we lost her, everything changed again. Dad and I clung to each other, trying desperately to hold the pieces of our shattered family together. "We'll get through this, Ellie. We have to," Dad would say, his voice gravelly, the dark circles under his eyes deepening. A year later, Dad introduced Madison into our lives. She stormed in like a tempest, with her immaculate hair and sharp clothes, taking over everything my mom had cherished. The first time I met her, her eyes appraised me with a smirk, as if she had me all figured out. She walked around, rearranging furniture and touching Mom's things, proclaiming, "William tells me you're quite the student. I'm sure you won't mind helping out more now that I'm here." I clenched my fists, anger simmering, but I bit my tongue for Dad's sake. "Sure, I can do more," I said, though every fiber in me resisted. Dad seemed to withdraw further, his laughter less frequent, his stories seldom shared. He claimed we were moving forward, but I wasn't convinced. Our new home was twice the size of the old one, and with it came twice the responsibility. From day one, Madison barked orders, her high heels clicking ominously on the marble as she directed the movers. Once they left, she turned her piercing gaze on me. "Ellie, I expect you to take care of your own space. I won't have time to clean up after you," she declared, setting the tone for our new life under her rule. As the days morphed into weeks, the house felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage, with Madison issuing an endless list of demands. "Ellie, the living room is dusty. Ellie, the silver isn't polished. Ellie, did you forget the dry cleaning?" The house that once brimmed with warmth and laughter now echoed with the cold, sharp commands of my new stepmother, making each day a challenge to endure. One afternoon, the tension at home had reached a peak when my dad noticed the strain I was under. He found me in the garden, yanking out weeds with unnecessary vigor. "Ellie, you've been quite withdrawn recently. Is everything all right?" he asked. "Just tired, Dad," I replied, tossing another handful of weeds into the bin and wiping the sweat from my forehead. "Maintaining this place is overwhelming." Dad surveyed the yard, his face clouding with concern. "It's a big responsibility for anyone. I'll speak with Madison about getting some extra help around here." I scoffed lightly, knowing Madison's opinion of me was less than favorable. "Good luck with that. She seems to think I'm her personal housekeeper." Dad's expression turned serious, a look I hadn't seen in a long time. "That wasn't my intention when we moved here. I'll take care of it, Ellie. You shouldn't have to bear all this burden." Despite his intentions, discussions with Madison seemed futile. She would nod and give a tight-lipped smile, but then it would be back to her usual demands. "Ellie, the hedges need trimming," or "Ellie, the guest rooms need fresh linens." It was draining trying to meet her exacting standards. This only made me more determined. I resolved not to let her wear me down. I kept my head low, did the work, and counted the days until I could leave for college. The thought of escaping to a place where no one could dictate my chores or dinner time fueled my resolve. Finally, the day arrived. I was leaving for college, ready to start anew in a city far from my stepmother's reach. I packed my bags early that morning, each one symbolizing the foundation of my new life. Dad watched me pack, a bittersweet smile on his face. "Are you sure you've got everything? And remember, I'll transfer money for your rent and books. Check your account when you arrive," he reminded. "Dad, relax. I'll be fine." "It's just college, not Mars," I replied, trying to lighten the mood, though my own heart pounded with anticipation. Living on my own was liberating. My apartment was small, but it was mine. I had no one to answer to, just my own space. My courses were challenging, but I thrived on the challenge, maintaining high grades. However, I quickly realized the difficulties of living on a tight budget. Going out seemed wasteful when I had financial goals. Instead, I got a part-time job at a local bakery. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped financially. One night, my coworker John teased me as I counted my tips again. Trying to make those bills multiply by staring at them, he joked. Just making sure it's all here. Budgeting isn't fun, I replied, tucking my money away. John, removing his apron for the night, chuckled. You could loosen up a bit. Join us for a drink tonight. Unwind a little. It was tempting, but I declined. Sorry, I can't. I need to save every penny. Maybe next time. I was determined to build a future where I'd be financially stable and able to give back to my dad for everything he'd done for me. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, a call from Madison disrupted it all. Her voice was cold and detached as she delivered news that would shake my world. Ellie, your father's had an accident. She disclosed our financial difficulties without a shred of compassion. We're tightening our belts around here, she announced, making it clear that they could no longer afford to help with my rent. The phone call ended abruptly, leaving me speechless and overwhelmed by the sudden reality of my situation. With no more financial support, my independence seemed to crumble. No more apartment, no more safety net. It was imperative to find a solution quickly. I shared my predicament with Mia, a dear friend from college. Her kindness was a constant in her personality, always there to offer support or a listening ear, whichever was needed more. Ellie, that's terrible, she empathized. Why don't you move in with me? We can split the rent, and it'll be more affordable for both of us, she suggested one day in the library. Living with Mia provided a much-needed respite during those oppressive times. We divided our living costs, which helped ease the financial strain. However, just as I was getting accustomed to our new arrangement, another setback hit 3 months later. Madison sent a message on social media. There's no more money for your tuition either. Your father's situation hasn't improved. You need to stand on your own now. Her words sent a wave of anger and despair through me. My savings were meager, barely covering bills and basic necessities. I tightened my budget even more, ruthlessly cutting all non-essentials, particularly food. Meals were now smaller, focused more on survival than pleasure. My clothes began to hang loosely on my thinner frame. One evening, Mia noticed. She came to my room, arms full of groceries, having seen my weight loss. Hey, I picked up some extra stuff and made too much dinner. You should come eat with us, she urged, noticing my hesitation. My stomach growled in protest, but I declined. Thanks, Jen, but I can't. I need to save every penny for tuition. Mia looked determined. Ellie, you need to eat, and you're not paying for this. It's just leftovers. Despite my desire to maintain some semblance of independence, hunger won. Okay, maybe just a little. Thanks, Jen. As the semester progressed, I immersed myself deeper into my studies, driven by the urgency to secure scholarships. This seemed the only way out of my financial predicament. Mia often encouraged me to take breaks and socialize. Ellie, come on, you can't study all the time. Come out with us tonight. It'll be fun and you need a break. My response was always the same. I can't, Jen. I really need to ace these exams. Mia expressed her concern repeatedly, but you're always working or studying. When do you ever relax? I would reply sharply, not lifting my gaze from my books. Relaxing doesn't pay the bills. The ongoing stress began to take its toll. The long hours at my jobs combined with even longer nights of studying left me utterly exhausted, barely running on fumes. I couldn't give up, not with a scholarship within reach, and my future hanging in the balance. The long hours at the diner had worn me out, and as I finished my shift, the sunrise painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. I was beyond exhausted, yet my responsibilities wouldn't wait for anyone. I had a crucial midterm looming. Trudging back to my apartment, I intended to take a quick shower before heading to campus. However, as I fumbled for my keys, a sudden wave of dizziness overwhelmed me. My surroundings spun chaotically, and I felt the ground abruptly meet my face. The chilling touch of the pavement was the last sensation I felt before everything turned dark. I jolted awake to the sterile scent of the hospital, harsh fluorescent lights glaring down at me. And 4 was attached to my arm, and Mia sat beside my bed, her face etched with worry and relief. "Ellie, thank God you're awake. You scared me." Mia's voice trembled. She explained that I had collapsed from severe malnutrition and dehydration. The doctor had been clear. I was pushing myself too hard and needed to rest. But rest seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford, not with so much at stake. Though my body screamed for reprieve, my mind was already racing with all I had to catch up on. Discharged from the hospital with stern warnings to take it easy, I ignored them as if they were mere suggestions. Once home, I attempted to call my dad, needing his reassurance, but only reached his voicemail. Frustrated and feeling increasingly isolated, I tried Madison next. She answered coldly, "Your father is abroad on shoe business, and no, we can't help. You're on your own." Her dismissive tone felt like a harsh slap. Hanging up, I was left in the deafening silence of my apartment, the reality of my predicament sinking in. I was alone, utterly so. Exams loomed ominously, the stress palpable, suffocating me slowly. To manage my workload and studies, I had to quit one of my jobs, which made my already scant finances dwindle to mere drops. Later, at our usual diner, I sat across from Mia, toying with the menu. My stomach rumbled, but my wallet was nearly empty. "Stop looking at the prices, Ellie. I've got this, okay?" Mia offered, her voice a blend of firmness and kindness. Accepting help was always hard for me. "I'll pay you back every cent," I insisted, each word heavy with pride. Mia just smiled and urged me to order something substantial. "You need it," she reminded me. Reluctantly, I chose the least expensive meal, swallowing my pride with each word. Mia was right, I needed the energy. As exams began, I poured myself into my studies, nights blending into days, my room a mess of textbooks and notes. I clung to the hope that somehow, through all the challenges, I would make it through. When I received my exam results, I was astounded to see straight A's, which even included a bonus for academic excellence. This achievement felt like a tiny, hopeful light at the end of an overwhelmingly dark period. Despite this, the weight of exhaustion was so heavy that all I could do was crawl into bed and shut out the world. I slept for several days straight, ignoring phone calls and text messages while life continued on around me. One night, the quiet of my modest apartment enveloped me, and I dreamed of my mother in the familiar surroundings of our old kitchen. She hummed a melody, her smile radiating warmth and safety. "Ellie, come here, sweetheart," she called out gently, her voice a comforting echo from happier times. In the dream, I moved towards her, enveloped by the solace of home. Yet, like all dreams, it ended abruptly, and I awoke in tears, feeling an intense emptiness. The loneliness of my apartment became unbearable, prompting a profound longing to reconnect with my mother. I resolved to return to my hometown, to visit her resting place, perhaps to recapture some semblance of the peace I experienced in my dream. After checking my finances, I managed to scrape together enough for the cheapest bus ticket available. Work would have to manage without me. I wasn't much good to anyone in my current state. "I'm going home for a few days," I informed my friend Jen over the phone, trying to sound more composed than I felt. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" she asked with concern. "Yes, but promise to call me anytime, day or night." "Promise," I assured her, comforted slightly by her worry. The journey back was a haze of tangled memories and what-ifs. As the bus entered the familiar streets of my hometown, a mix of dread and nostalgia welled up inside me. It was meant to be a simple visit to feel close to my mom again, but as I walked through the cemetery, a figure by a grave caught my eye. My heart raced as I recognized the stooped shoulders, my father, kneeling by a grave. "Dad." My voice came out hesitant, fearing to break the delicate silence. He turned, and our eyes met, confusion swiftly replaced by recognition and a hint of sorrow. "Ellie," he murmured, his voice laden with emotion. It had been years since we last saw each other. Without a second thought, I ran to him, all my reservations washed away by the sudden need to be held. He stood and pulled me into his arms, and I felt as safe and cherished as when I was 4 years old. "I had a dream about your mother," he admitted, his eyes searching mine. "She told me to come here today." I gasped, stunned by the coincidence. "I had a dream about her too. That's why I'm here," I shared, tears blending with a surprised laugh. He wiped my tears with an old, frayed handkerchief. "Seems like she's still looking out for us," he said, a note of wonder in his voice. "Yeah, it does," I agreed, my laughter mixing with tears. "We should talk, Ellie. Come back to the house with me," he suggested, his voice hopeful yet cautious. I paused, memories of strained visits flashing in my mind. "Are you sure?" I asked, uncertain yet drawn by the chance to reconnect not just with his memory of her, but with him as well. Madison was in the front yard, meticulously pruning roses, when we pulled up. Her sharp clippers echoed her tense mood. As I stepped out of the car, her eyes narrowed at my unexpected presence. I moved closer, my confidence buoyed by Dad's presence beside me. "I came to talk with Dad. We have a lot to discuss," I announced. Dad glanced at Madison and suggested, "Why don't you start dinner? We'll be inside soon." Her lips tightened, but she nodded stiffly and went into the house. Inside, the living room felt staged for show rather than comfort, a stark contrast to the warm memories I held of it. At dinner, the air was thick with tension. Madison looked unusually pale and jittery, mentioning she needed to leave for an urgent errand. Dad's firm voice stopped her. "Sit down. We're not finished here." Turning to me, he expressed concern. "Ellie, you've lost so much weight. Are you dieting?" I laughed dryly. "Dieting? Hardly. It's been a struggle, Dad. I've been juggling 2 jobs to pay for school and living expenses on my own." His brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I've been sending $5,000 and $10 monthly to your account to cover your expenses." I was stunned. "What?" "I haven't received any money for 4 years now." Dad turned to Madison, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Is this true? Where's the money, Madison?" She stood, her chair scraping the floor loudly. I needed it. It was meant to be temporary." Dad's voice was low and dangerous. "Tell me everything now." With hesitation, Madison confessed to getting caught in a financial pyramid scheme, thinking she could quickly remedy our financial woes. Instead, she ended up deep in debt. I used Ellie's tuition money to pay them off, hoping to replace it before anyone noticed. Dad's hands trembled with rage. "You jeopardized Ellie's education and health for a quick scam? And you hid this from me?" Madison's usual poise shattered, and she whimpered in fear. Dad's decision was final and cold. "You need to leave tonight, and we're done here. I want a divorce." After she hastily packed and left, Dad turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Ellie, I'm so sorry. From now on, I'll manage your finances directly. No more intermediaries." I managed a small smile, sharing some good news. "Actually, Dad, I recently got a full scholarship. Tuition's covered." His face brightened with pride. "That's my girl. Always making me proud. How about we plan a real vacation for you? You've earned it." The vacation was a dream. Blue skies, golden beaches, and soothing waves. It was a chance to heal and look ahead with renewed vigor. Back at school, I still worked part-time, but now it was to save for a special gift for Dad, a token of my gratitude. Despite everything, I found time for friends and fun, balancing joy with responsibility. "You're going out more," Mia noticed one evening. "Yeah, trying to find a balance." "It's okay to have a little fun," I replied, adjusting my earrings. She threw a cushion at me playfully. "Just don't forget us when you're famous." I laughed, lighter than I'd felt in years. Looking in the mirror, I saw someone who had weathered a storm and come out stronger. Careful with money, not out of desperation, but to build a bright, chosen future. My name is Sophia. My parents had always assured me that they would cover the cost of my college education, so I never worried about needing to work during school or figuring out how to pay for my tuition. They had set up a college fund specifically for this purpose and had similarly supported my older brother, David, during his college years. Given this precedent, I expected to receive equal support. David, who is now 24, has always been the favored child in our family. Despite his often challenging behavior and a tendency to stir trouble, my parents have consistently been more lenient with him than with me. For example, when he brought a beer to school and opened it during class as part of a dare, he was briefly suspended but faced no real consequences at home. In contrast, I know that had I done something similar, the repercussions for my parents would have been severe and long-lasting. Over the years, I've sensed a clear disparity in how my parents discipline us, often feeling that they are unfairly harsh on me while letting David escape accountability for his actions. Any attempts I've made to discuss this perceived unfairness have been dismissed as mere jealousy, which only adds to my frustration. Recently, this ongoing issue came to a head. A few months ago, just before David turned 24 and while still in college with no job, he purchased a luxury sports car using a credit card my dad had given him for personal expenses. This was a significant expense taken on without any immediate means to cover it, highlighting again the special privileges he seems to enjoy. Around the same time, I was about to start college. However, I was shocked to learn that the funds promised to me for my education had been redirected to support David's expenses instead. Feeling betrayed and without other recourse, I confided in my grandparents about the situation. In response to hearing about the unequal treatment I had received, my grandparents decided to adjust their will, redirecting my parents' inheritance to cover the costs of my education. This decision by my grandparents provided me with some relief and a way to finance my college education, despite the deep disappointment in my parents' decision to favor David over me. Now, as I focus on my studies, I am learning to accept that my parents might never change their ways. I'm moving forward, supported by the knowledge that my grandparents have recognized the imbalance and have taken steps to correct it in their own way. During my college years, there was an unforgettable day when my brother unexpectedly video called our entire family to showcase a car he had purchased for himself. Given that he was financially strapped and still hadn't graduated, I was certain our parents would be upset. Surprisingly, they were quite supportive of his decision, which I found utterly impractical. I felt he should reverse the purchase to recoup his money, but since the car was technically bought with my dad's credit card, I held back my objections, merely congratulating him and moving on. Shortly after, my brother graduated and secured a job as a secretary for my uncle. Initially, he managed to make the car payments for 2 months, but by the 3rd month, he missed a payment. This outcome was precisely what I had feared and predicted. A few nights ago, my parents called me in the middle of the night to discuss the situation. Despite the late hour, it became clear they weren't seeking advice but rather sharing their decision to cover the missed payment using money from my college fund, which was set aside for my education. They explained that they planned to continue supporting my brother to prevent damage to my father's credit score, even if it meant using my entire college fund. This was a significant departure from our original financial planning for my education, and they hinted I might need to find a job if funds fell short. Understandably, this revelation caused a great deal of frustration on my part, as it was a drastic shift from what had been promised to me. I don't want to seem unreasonable, but there was a promise made to me, and I expected it to be honored, especially since I wasn't at fault. The predicament arose from my brother's actions, not mine, and logically, he should have been the one to address it. It was clear to me that the sudden plan they had conceived was fundamentally unfair to me, and I was not prepared to accept it without a fight. Thus, they needed to consider other solutions. My parents' response was straightforward. They felt entitled to redirect the funds from my college savings, explaining that it was their money, originally intended to support my education. However, due to an unexpected financial emergency, they deemed it necessary to use these funds to settle some urgent debts. They expected me to understand their perspective. I tried to convince them to find another way, perhaps by giving up the car that had caused the financial strain, but they refused, citing sentimental value. It was baffling and frustrating to see them cling to sentimental reasons for the car, while so readily compromising my educational prospects and future. If they had been upfront about the possibility of me needing to fund my own college education, I wouldn't have been as upset. But the sudden shift in their stance was unacceptable. After a heated discussion, I realized further dialogue was futile. They had made up their minds. Feeling cornered, I ended the conversation and reached out to my maternal grandparents, who had always shown me unwavering support. I hesitated to impose on my grandparents, knowing they were advanced in age, despite their willingness to welcome me with open arms. Out of respect for their situation and not wanting to burden them, I had always refrained from asking too much. Yet, under these circumstances, where my college tuition, a significant and serious expense, was at stake, I felt compelled to turn to them for help. Previously, I appreciated my parents' intentions when they had set aside a college fund for me. However, with the current turn of events, I had no choice but to seek assistance from my grandparents, as I was determined not to bear the consequences of my brother's actions. It wasn't my fault, but I was deeply troubled and emotional when I reached out to my parents. They suggested I come home for the weekend to discuss the matter face-to-face, as it was too complex for a brief phone call. Fortunately, it was Friday, so I planned to return home the next day. However, I bypassed visiting my parents and ignored their calls and messages, choosing instead to go directly to my grandparents' home. There, I shared everything that was weighing on me, and in my distress, I broke down in tears. I expressed my concerns about not wanting to be a financial or any other kind of burden to them, but emphasized my need for their support to continue my education, especially since my parents were putting me in a difficult position. My grandfather was quite upset after hearing about my situation, but reassured me instantly that I shouldn't worry. He promised that they would support my college endeavors, allowing me to return to my studies without any stress about finances. This assurance brought me some relief, and with that, I decided to block my parents and my brother, feeling deeply hurt by the position they had put me in, a situation I felt I could not forgive. I spent that Saturday with my grandparents, soaking up their support and reassurance. By Sunday evening, I was ready to head back to college, which was conveniently an hour's drive from both my grandparents' and my parents' homes. When I returned to college, I began receiving numerous calls and messages from my uncle, which was unexpected as we aren't particularly close. Initially, I ignored them, suspecting it might relate to my parents, but curiosity got the better of me, and I eventually answered. My uncle urged me to unblock my parents, explaining that they were very upset and wanted to speak with me. He confessed his frustration, as they had been pestering him to mediate a conversation between us, which he found bothersome. Reluctantly, I reconnected with my parents. Upon contact, they immediately lashed out, accusing me of ruining their lives and turning my grandparents against them. They claimed I was seeking revenge for their support of my brother, driven by jealousy, a baseless accusation that baffled me, especially since my grandparents had just agreed to fund my education, which couldn't possibly be objectionable. This tumultuous series of events left me to ponder the dynamics of my family relationships and the unexpected support I found with my grandparents. I thought my family wouldn't be impacted by my decision, but I was mistaken. After I left, my grandparents called my parents to inform them that any financial assistance I might need would be deducted from their inheritance. This revelation upset my parents greatly, and they blamed me for orchestrating the situation to get back at them, even though that wasn't my intention. Initially, I believed that my grandparents' decision was fair. They were only treating my parents the way my parents had treated me. Despite my parents' accusations over the phone, I stood my ground, believing they deserved the outcome, and then I chose to block them. Afterward, they tried to shift the blame onto me through a social media post, which led to mixed reactions within the family. Some relatives sided with me, while others suggested I should be more understanding, labeling me as entitled. This confused me because my parents had always promised to support my college expenses, a promise they couldn't keep. I felt justified in expecting them to uphold their commitment, and I don't believe that expecting them to do so makes me entitled. The situation with my brother also perplexed me. He had made an imprudent decision to buy a car without considering how to pay for it, yet some family members showed him sympathy, not me. I was simply trying to secure a decent education to improve my future prospects, something they seemed to overlook. The ongoing backlash made me question my stance. My grandparents reassured me, Yet doubts lingered due to the harsh labels being thrown my way by others. Now, I'm left feeling uncertain and upset, wondering if perhaps I am wrong in my expectations, or if it's just a misunderstanding of my circumstances. After spending some time reflecting, I've come to feel at peace with the recent events. I believe I made the right choice, and so did my grandparents. It's clear that if anyone was at fault, it was my parents. I don't hold my brother responsible. He's not the brightest, and that's largely because my parents have always enabled his thoughtless behavior. They've never challenged him or made him consider the consequences of his actions. Instead, they've always supported him blindly, even if it meant dealing with the repercussions of his choices. It's their choice to cover for him financially, but they need to understand that their actions have consequences, and this is just one of them. I've decided to ignore all the negative feedback I received earlier. Some relatives, who barely know me or what I've been through, have made unfair judgments based on only my parents' perspective. They don't know that my parents had promised to cover my college expenses, a promise they blatantly failed to keep. I've talked to my grandparents about everything, and they agree that my parents' behavior was unfair. They're trying to get a misleading post about me taken down, and I've decided to leave that in their hands and not get involved further. I'm exhausted from the constant drama with my parents. They may be suitable for my brother David, but they certainly haven't been good parents to me. Reading your supportive comments on my original post has been incredibly uplifting. While some still dared to call me entitled, despite knowing that my expectations were based on a promise my parents made, I'm choosing to ignore them. I know my truth and what I stand for, and that's what matters to me. Misunderstandings and misrepresentations by others, whether they are relatives or strangers online, no longer affect me because I am confident in my own integrity. These relatives are different from the ones who criticized me. They reached out to support me right after my parents first shared their post. I am grateful for their understanding and backing throughout this situation. Discussing the situation within my family, there are a few relatives involved, including my father's cousin and my aunt's family, who is my mother's first cousin. Both my grandparents and these relatives have been incredibly supportive during a challenging time. They've regularly checked in on me recently and have even intervened on my behalf with my parents concerning a distressing social media post that negatively impacted me. Despite my initial resolve not to let online comments affect me, curiosity got the better of me. I created a fake account to monitor the responses to the post about me. Unfortunately, the negativity was overwhelming, especially coming from people I've known all my life. It was shocking to see some siding with my parents, and the hurtful assumption that I was envious of another family member, David, compounded my distress. Thankfully, my supportive family members managed to convince my parents to remove the post, citing potential financial repercussions related to their inheritance as a persuasive argument. It's disheartening to realize the extent of their prioritization of money over familial bonds. This situation has left me feeling isolated from my parents, who have not reached out since, even though I unblocked them hoping for an apology or any acknowledgement of their missteps. The silence from their end confirms a lack of concern and acknowledgement of any wrongdoing on their part. It's particularly disappointing considering I've always tried to maintain a relationship with my siblings, even if we weren't close, holding on to a sliver of hope for familial unity and recognition. However, the consistent emotional neglect over the years has been profoundly painful, and the realization that this pattern is unlikely to change is something I'm coming to terms with, despite the inherent hope that one day they might see my value as part of the family. I'm not quite sure why I'm sharing this right now, but I feel a strong need to express my thoughts and clear my mind, so I can find some normalcy again. Although it hurts, I'm relieved that a certain post has been removed. It's become clear that certain people never truly cared for me, and likely never will. This is a tough reality I have to face. I'm considering blocking them once more for my own peace of mind. Allowing them access to me only ensures they can continue to say whatever they want, and I'd have to just deal with it. It's healthier for me to completely sever these ties and close that chapter for good. They are my family, and never truly were. From now on, my family will consist of my grandparents and those who have supported me during these hard times. I'm so grateful for your encouragement and for reassuring me that I'm not alone. I'm thrilled to share that I'm doing much better. After realizing that reconciling with my parents was off the table, I sought therapy to cope with this new reality. My home is no longer the place I grew up in, but where my grandparents live. This was hard to accept initially, but distancing myself from my immediate family and starting therapy have helped me adjust. During the Thanksgiving break, I returned to my grandparents' home, as I no longer have contact with my parents. It was comforting to see that those who support me have also distanced themselves from my parents. The family now seems divided, but that division started from the other side, not mine. My grandparents have decided to leave their inheritance to me, altering their will quietly to avoid any unnecessary drama. They haven't disclosed this change to my parents, ensuring any future reconciliation attempts are genuine and not influenced by financial interests. I'm forever thankful for my grandparents' unconditional love and support, something I never received from my parents. While I may never have the family I once thought I needed, I'm content knowing I have the family I deserve, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. My name is Sophia. I'm a 27-year-old woman who has had a strained relationship with my mother ever since I can remember, but recent events have pushed things to a breaking point, particularly concerning my son. Here's the full story. My mother, who is 59 years old, has been a single parent since the unexpected death of my father when my younger sister Hazel and I were just children. Raising us alone undoubtedly left her with deep scars and bitterness, a side of her that others often overlooked due to her situation. I've always been an energetic and outgoing person, always trying to bring a smile to those I meet. However, I rarely received warmth or affection from my mother. Growing up, I tried to help out at home, particularly with Hazel, who was only 3 when our dad died. While my mother occasionally acknowledged my efforts, it never felt like enough. This lack of affection made me rebellious and resentful, eventually leading me to take on responsibilities beyond my years, like working part-time, handling household chores, and caring for Hazel, all while still a teenager. Yet, no matter what I did, it was never good enough for my mom, who critiqued even the smallest imperfections, causing frequent arguments. As time passed, my relationship with my family grew colder, especially after I noticed clear favoritism towards Hazel. This became painfully obvious when my mother missed my high school graduation to tend to a mildly ill Hazel, a hurtful decision that stuck with me. After graduation, I moved to another city for college and cut most ties with my family, maintaining only sporadic contact with Hazel. Years later, I married and had a son named John, who suffered from severe food allergies. After my marriage ended due to abusive circumstances, I returned to my hometown with John. During this time, Hazel and I reconnected somewhat, and she arranged a visit to my new place, unexpectedly bringing along our mother. Despite the awkwardness, I initially avoided confronting the past for the sake of John's happiness. However, the situation escalated when I had to go on a work trip and John fell ill. I asked my mother to take him to the hospital, but she refused, claiming she had plans with Hazel. This act of negligence and favoritism was the last straw, showing me that the patterns of my childhood still lingered and now threatened my son's well-being. This incident has made me reevaluate my relationship with my mother and sister, realizing that their support is conditional and unreliable. As painful as it is, I must now consider what relationships I expose my son to and whether my mother and sister should be part of our lives moving forward. Witnessing my mother's heartfelt pleas for a chance to be part of her grandson John's life touched me deeply. Combined with seeing how joyful it made John, I chose to mend our strained relationship. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm. I secured a flexible product marketing manager that allowed me to work from home, accommodating the needs of my young son. Meanwhile, Hazel, living an hour away due to college, visited us occasionally. However, the situation with my mother grew complicated. She started visiting almost every weekend, ostensibly to help with John. But rather than helping, she began taking over the household, acting as though I was still living under her supervision. Initially, I overlooked her domineering behavior, attributing it to her nature. But as her intrusiveness escalated, I realized something needed to change. Reluctantly, I asked Hazel to speak with our mother, hoping to avoid a direct confrontation that John might witness. Hazel agreed to talk to her that day, giving me a momentary sense of relief. But the situation quickly deteriorated. The next day, my mother called, upset that I hadn't approached her directly. During our conversation, which quickly became one-sided, I had to put her on speakerphone and continue with my work as she vented. Realizing I wasn't responding, she eventually hung up. Later, Hazel informed me that our mother was deeply hurt by how I handled the conversation. Determined not to be manipulated as I had been in the past, I stood firm in my decision to set boundaries, insisting that our mother take a step back from John and me for some time. Hazel was hesitant, but ultimately supported my decision. A year of minimal contact passed, during which Hazel graduated from college and John turned 4, becoming more independent. This allowed me to occasionally rely on babysitters during urgent work situations, usually Hazel. However, an urgent work situation once coincided with a job interview for Hazel, leaving me with no choice but to ask our mother to babysit. Despite initial reservations, I briefed her on John's allergies and emergency procedures. As I was leaving, she reassured me, reminding me of her experience raising children. I left a detailed list of John's needs just in case, and asked her to call me immediately if any issues arose. Unfortunately, within less than 3 hours, I received a frantic call instructing me to rush to the hospital. John had suffered an allergic reaction. I apologized to my bosses and hurried to the hospital, filled with concern for my son. I found myself deeply upset with my mother and asked her to wait outside while I spoke to the doctors and John inside. They informed me that John had consumed cookies containing gluten, which is among the several allergens that pose a risk to him. Thankfully, he was out of danger, but it was a close call. I reassured the doctor that such an oversight would not happen again. Afterward, I took my mother home. Hazel, who had arrived earlier, helped by taking John to his room. The confrontation that followed with my mother was intense. Initially, she tried to shift the blame onto John for secretly eating the cookie. However, she soon admitted her mistake in not paying attention to the allergy guidelines I had provided. I made it clear that her carelessness could no longer be overlooked as John's safety was at stake. Feeling hurt, she tearfully claimed it was an accident and accused me of being too strict, but I stood firm. Shortly after, she left the house, followed by Hazel. Later, Hazel texted me, suggesting I had been too severe. I responded firmly, indicating that anyone compromising John's safety would face similar restrictions. This led me to hire Mila, a professional babysitter from a reputable agency, ensuring John's care would no longer depend on family members. Hazel's visits grew sparse, especially after she started a new job. Months later, on the day of John's routine doctor's visit, I encountered a work emergency. Mila was unavailable due to a personal matter, so I reached out to Hazel for help. She hesitated, mentioning another commitment, and hinted that my mother could help. Before I could decline, my mother, overhearing our conversation, vehemently expressed her refusal to babysit, criticizing my parenting in the process. Hazel attempted to intervene, but the damage was done. Frustrated and hurt, I confronted my mother over the phone. She attempted to apologize, claiming frustration had gotten the better of her, but her words felt insincere. I decided then to distance myself and John from such negativity. Despite Hazel's later apologies, I chose to ignore them, disillusioned by her initial dishonesty about her availability. I opted to reschedule my work commitments to accompany John to the doctor myself, and withdrew from contacting my family further. As time passed, John occasionally asked about his grandmother, reminding me of the complexities of family dynamics, but I remained resolute in prioritizing his well-being above all. Witnessing my son miss his grandmother was difficult, but I managed to shift his focus to other interests as his 5th birthday approached. We had selected a school for him to begin kindergarten, and I sent out birthday invitations, including one to Hazel, but intentionally left out my mother. Hazel arrived at the party with a large bag of gifts that seemed quite lavish. Feeling uneasy about accepting such pricey items, I asked her to refrain from spending so much in the future, especially on a child who quickly loses interest in his toys. Hazel clarified that one of the gifts was personally from her, while the others were from my mother. I was taken aback and didn't know how to respond, so I requested Hazel to take them back. She declined, explaining that she didn't want to get involved in the ongoing dispute between my mother and me, and urged me to accept the gesture on behalf of my son. Feeling guilty about keeping my son away from his grandmother, especially since they enjoyed each other's company, I decided to reconsider the situation after Hazel's intervention. Following the party, my son and I began opening his gifts, starting with the big bag from his grandmother. Inside, I found a plushy school bag accessory. As I reached for more, I discovered several boxes of cookies from a high-end bakery, cookies that contained ingredients to which my son is allergic. I was frustrated that my mother had made such an elaborate gesture without considering its appropriateness. Hoping to avoid an upset, I told my son that the plushie was the only item in the bag. However, he threw a tantrum and insisted on opening a box of cookies. Things escalated, and unable to resolve the issue, I called my mother to ask her to explain to my son that he couldn't have the cookies. The phone call turned confrontational. My mother accused me of being overly cautious due to my vegan lifestyle, which she dismissively termed an alternative way of living. Taken aback by her harsh words, I pressed her to deal with the immediate issue, which she reluctantly did by telling my son that the cookies were not for him and promising a different gift the next day. After the call, I found myself dwelling on her critical words, which brought up painful childhood memories. I reached out to Hazel for support, but she advised me to just let it go, suggesting that's just how our mother is. From then on, I chose to limit my interactions with Hazel. The next day, when my mother arrived with another gift, I asked her to leave. I told her that if she couldn't respect my lifestyle choices, especially when they were intended to protect my son, she didn't deserve a place in our lives. She tried to guilt-trip me by mentioning the cost of the gifts, but I returned everything to her, resolved to maintain our distance. This decision was tough, but necessary to safeguard my son's well-being and uphold my values. As I checked for the gift John had already unwrapped, she urged me not to hold grudges, but I was resolved to sever ties with her completely, so she left disheartened. I dreaded telling John that his grandmother would be absent due to personal commitments, which he took well. Shortly after, Hazel phoned, distraught over our mother's outburst and subsequent illness after leaving my home. She implored me to reconcile and make amends, but I explained that's just how our mother is and reassured her that things would settle down soon. Hazel accused me of lacking empathy and ended the call abruptly, which didn't bother me much, though I sensed it might strain my relationship with her and possibly affect John's relationship with his grandmother. Thank you to everyone who supported me in the comments. Your understanding has confirmed that I wasn't at fault. While I regret the strain with Hazel, I hold her responsible for overlooking our mother's misconduct and for her attempts at justifying it. I've decided not to reach out until she acknowledges her part and apologizes. Many of you are curious about my relationship with Hazel, given her favored status. I've always understood that this wasn't her fault, but rather our mother's for showing blatant favoritism. Hazel has maintained a balanced and non-confrontational approach between us, which is why she encouraged me to let things go. However, it's crucial for her to realize that enduring such behavior without objection is not how healthy relationships work, and she's now seeing the consequences through our mother's unjustified outbursts. Recently, I planned a brief getaway with John, aiming for some peace before his school year started. Just before our departure, I received an unexpected call from my paternal aunt, who rarely featured in our lives. She berated me for not visiting our hospitalized mother, informed by the negative things Mom had told her and other family members. I chose not to explain and requested her to refrain from meddling, which led to more harsh words, but I ended the call and blocked her, hoping this would deter further intrusions. John and I managed to enjoy our vacation, during which I disconnected from all technology, finding much-needed tranquility. Upon returning, I discovered voicemails from relatives and a letter slandering me as an inconsiderate daughter and a poor mother, clear signs that my mother continued to vilify me. I couldn't fathom reasoning with her and realized reaching out to Hazel might be my only remaining connection. She didn't pick up my calls, likely busy at work, leaving matters unresolved for the time being. I sent my sister a voice message to alert her about our mother spreading rumors about me and warned her of the potential consequences if the family's interference didn't stop. Surprisingly, when she called back that night, she acted as though nothing was wrong. I insisted on sticking to the issue at hand, and she informed me that our mother was desperate to speak with me. Initially, I resisted, but after some persuasion, I agreed to the conversation. During the call, my mother sounded cheerful and oblivious to the strain between us. I interrupted her to find out why she was so eager to talk. She admitted that ever since I had distanced her from my son John, she had been quietly struggling. Despite her previous negative comments about me to others, she now seemed willing to meet any conditions just to be part of John's life again. She hinted that it was also a way to mend our relationship. However, considering her past actions that endangered my son, not once but twice, I found it hard to let go of my resentment and declined her offer to reconcile. The days that followed were relatively peaceful with fewer interruptions, and I didn't hear from my sister Hazel. Life seemed to be getting back to normal until I received an invitation to a childhood friend's wedding. Deciding to break my usual routine, I attended the event with John. Unexpectedly, I ran into Hazel and my mother there. John was excited to see his grandmother, who managed to keep her composure around me. While I maintained a polite demeanor, I was cautious and kept John close. At one point, my mother expressed a desire to speak with me, but to avoid a public scene, I hesitated. However, seeing John upset and wanting to be with his grandma, I relented. Hazel helped mediate, suggesting we sit together without a formal seating arrangement. This allowed my mother to spend time with John while I monitored closely. The evening went smoothly, and Hazel apologized for her previous accusations, helping to clear the air between us. Although I interacted minimally with my mother, focusing instead on ensuring John's safety, the night ended without incident. As we prepared to leave, my mother stopped me to ask if she could, based on the evening's interactions, be a part of our lives again. I reminded her of her past mistakes and my responsibility to protect John, stating that a few hours of good behavior couldn't erase the risks she had posed to him. She was visibly upset by my decision, and Hazel stepped in to comfort her as we departed quickly, with John also distressed by the emotional situation. This recent encounter made it clear that while I'm open to civility for the sake of family gatherings, the safety and well-being of my son must always come first, regardless of the difficult decisions it might entail. My mom tried to persuade John to accompany her, but he was too frightened and stayed close to me instead. Her tears soon turned into loud sobs, drawing a crowd of onlookers curious about the commotion. After I put John to bed, I phoned Hazel, but she whispered, asking me to call back later, so I did the following day. It was Sunday, and after feeding John and finishing my chores, I explained to him that he wouldn't be seeing his grandmother anymore and that he should not interact with anyone outside of school without my approval, especially Hazel or Grandma. He seemed to grasp this, perhaps because of the incident the night before, and agreed. Hazel called me shortly afterward, explaining she couldn't talk the previous night because her mom had become extremely upset at the mention of my name. I assured her it was okay and inquired if everything was all right. She said things were stable for now, but expressed concern that her mom's erratic behavior might be a sign of a deeper issue. I shared her concerns, worried that her mom might trouble us again. Hazel understood and suggested getting a restraining order if her condition didn't improve. I also contemplated moving if her mom recovered and attempted anything similar again. Her mom was diagnosed with severe borderline personality disorder, BPD, and the psychiatrist recommended she be admitted to a private mental health facility for specialized care due to her age. Hazel discussed this with her mom, who surprisingly understood and accepted the doctor's advice. They will be relocating to another state next week for her admission. Hazel informed me that her mom would cover the costs of the treatment, so I did not need to contribute financially. Hazel also relayed a message from her mom to John, promising to get better and hoping to see him once I felt it was okay. I chose to keep this message to myself for now. For the time being, John and I will not be moving since her mom will be away, and despite our strained relationship, I still hope she recovers. At 26, I never imagined my father's thorough estate planning would unravel our family dynamics. Let me explain the situation in detail, starting from the beginning. I work as a stakeholder for a prominent tech company in Seattle, a career path my father always envisioned for me. He would proudly proclaim, "Technology is the future," especially after I got into the University of Washington's computer science program. Though not a tech person himself, my father was a visionary who started a construction business during the late 1969's recession. He began modestly, armed only with a pickup truck and his tools, taking on projects that others avoided. During those tough early days, my parents lived frugally in a small apartment. However, my dad was driven by a firm belief in his mission, often saying, "The key is to build relationships, not just buildings." This philosophy helped him navigate the challenging early years of his business. His company became known for its integrity and commitment to fair pricing and realistic schedules. He always advised, "First establish trust, then the profits will follow." Specializing in complex restoration projects that required both technical skill and a sensitivity to historical details, his business flourished by the mid-2000s in Seattle, thanks to the trust and loyalty he fostered with his clients and employees. Even during the 2004 financial crisis, when many firms were struggling, my dad's company survived without laying off a single worker. He went so far as to forego his salary and take out a second mortgage on his prized Mustang to keep the company afloat. From him, I learned more about leadership during these times than any formal education could offer. He always treated his employees like family, believing that if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your business. His managerial style greatly influenced my own approach when I was promoted to team lead at my tech company. I implemented detailed documentation for our coding processes, similar to how my father maintained extensive logs for his construction sites. This helped us meet challenging deadlines and maintain a strong team dynamic. During my junior year at a hackathon, I met Hazel, who was studying business consultant and helping to organize the event. Despite my tired appearance and reliance on energy drinks, she found my passion for coding endearing. My father instantly liked her too, recognizing a kindred spirit. However, the current family dilemma began unexpectedly. After my father's passing, meticulous estate planning left me as the owner of our family home. This fact seemed to slip everyone's mind when, amidst rising tensions, my mom sided with my stepdad and his children, leading to them kicking me out. Now, I find myself in a position where I must reclaim what is legally mine, reflecting on how such careful planning by my father could lead to such a family divide. After their first meal together, she realized the importance of not letting this one slip away. Following college, Hazel's father helped her establish her own chief operating officer, COO, by leveraging his extensive network of local business owners. He taught her the essentials of drafting contracts and the importance of setting clear business goals, always emphasizing that success is not just about knowledge, but also about fostering success in others. He dedicated those years to sharing his wisdom, greatly shaping Hazel's career. Every Sunday, Hazel and I made it a point to drive to my parents' house for dinner. We gathered on the back deck, a space my father had built himself, and enjoyed long conversations that blended into the evening as he fired up the grill. Despite not always grasping the technical aspects of my latest projects, my father engaged deeply, asking thoughtful questions that showed his interest. My mother, observing us with a playful eye roll, would comment on our computer talk. My father took great pride in our family home, which he had bought with earnings from his first major construction project, a historic restoration in one of Seattle's oldest neighborhoods. The house, a beautiful craftsman with a wraparound porch and a meticulously organized workshop in the garage, stood as a testament to his craftsmanship. He managed every detail of the house with precision, from renovations to repairs, meticulously documenting each improvement in a detailed spreadsheet. "A house is like a living being," he would say, teaching me to maintain it as diligently as he did, from cleaning the gutters to inspecting the foundation. His maintenance routine was comprehensive, addressing everything from roof checks after winter storms to regular filter changes, emphasizing that neglecting small tasks can lead to larger issues. The garage was not only a workshop but also a classroom where he taught me more than just how to handle tools. He had customized the space with unique storage solutions and a special workbench for woodworking lessons. He believed that every piece of wood tells a story, and he used the organized workspace, with tools neatly outlined on a pegboard wall, to teach the importance of order and purpose, lessons that extended beyond the garage. Weekends were sacred for family bonding and imparting life lessons. Together in that garage, my father and I spent countless hours working on his 1976 Mustang, a restoration project he started when I was 14. He claimed it would strengthen our father-son bond, and it did, turning into a classroom of life lessons. He always advised using the right tool for the job, warning against the allure of shortcuts which could lead to greater costs in the long run. Although capable of completing the Mustang in a year, he chose to extend the project over 1 year, valuing the process over the final outcome. From him, I learned not only about mechanics but also project management, documenting each step of our journey together with the Mustang, creating memories and lessons that I cherish and still follow today. We meticulously documented each phase and kept detailed records of our work throughout the development process. This was more than just a simple car repair. As he would often say, it was about learning to dissect large challenges into smaller, more manageable tasks. This approach proved invaluable in my career as a software developer. After Hazel and I got married, we bought a quaint house about 19 minutes away from my parents. Although my father insisted the mortgage be in our names to help us build our credit history, he generously helped with the down payment. He would often explain the importance of standing on our own and becoming self-reliant. As we settled into our new home, Dad passed on his knowledge of practical skills, teaching me how to install ceiling fans and repair drywall during weekend renovation projects. These lessons were part of his broader aim to prepare me for the responsibilities of homeownership. Meanwhile, my career was advancing rapidly. I had recently been promoted to a resolve conflict, responsible for a team developing critical infrastructure solutions. Despite the long hours and intense pressure, I relished the role. During this busy period, Dad would frequently check in on me during my lunch breaks, offering advice without prompting. He understood the pressures of leadership and would remind me of the importance of delegation, saying, "You can't do everything yourself, just like I can't build a house alone." When Dad started feeling perpetually tired, we were just beginning to consider starting a family. He procrastinated on visiting the doctor despite Mom's urging, brushing off our concerns by attributing his fatigue to overwork. At that time, he was immersed in his most ambitious project yet, a multi-million-dollar development deal that promised to secure his company's future for the next decade. Looking back, I regret not pushing him harder to get those medical checks. Maybe things could have been different. As the business expanded, Dad was exploring opportunities in data analyst in the Pacific Northwest and had even opened a second office in Portland. He had built a reputation for modernizing historic buildings while preserving their original charm, often telling clients, "It's about embracing the future while respecting the past." Dad's passion for preservation permeated both his personal and professional life. The Mustang, a project of ours, was a testament to this. Our last significant conversation was about taking the newly restored Mustang to car shows. He was excited about registering for the Pacific Northwest Classic, his eyes lighting up with youthful enthusiasm as he planned to show off what a real muscle car looks like to the younger generation. He remained optimistic and future-oriented until the end. One ordinary morning turned abrupt when I received a distressing call from Mom during an important work meeting. I almost ignored the call, absorbed in a crucial project discussion, but something compelled me to step out and answer it. Mom was sobbing uncontrollably, struggling to speak. Dad had collapsed at a construction site. When I arrived at the hospital, I was informed that my father had already passed away from a sudden and severe heart attack at the age of 56. The weeks that followed were blurred by grief and the necessary formalities that come with losing someone. His funeral was attended by a multitude of people from various aspects of his life, including business associates, community members, and even competitors. Everyone seemed to have their own unique story about how my dad had positively impacted their lives, whether through support, advice, or simply being a confidant during tough times. An old craftsman recounted how my dad had kept him on the payroll even when he was too ill to work, emphasizing that my father always prioritized people over profits. This sentiment was echoed by many of his employees, who shared personal stories I had never known, like how he had financed a foreman's daughter's college textbooks, supported another through a divorce, and spent extra time teaching apprentices about the intricacies of historical restoration. The company's conference room soon became an impromptu tribute to him, filled with photos and notes from clients and staff. Shortly after the funeral, we met with Dad's attorney, Mr. Daniel, who introduced us to a meticulously organized estate plan titled Family Security Protocol. This plan included detailed instructions for managing his properties and affairs, with personal notes accompanying the legal documents. Mr. Daniel, with over 35 years of experience, remarked he had never seen such a thorough plan, which even outlined a 5-year business transition strategy for various potential scenarios. Meanwhile, my mom started attending a bereavement support group at her church, where she met Henry, a widower who had lost his wife to cancer. Initially, she mentioned Henry casually, how he recommended a helpful book or shared comforting words about grief. Henry, a group facilitator, soon became a regular part of her life as their friendship evolved from attending church services together to having meals and eventually going on dinner dates. This rapid progression of their relationship caused some family friends and relatives to express concern. At one family gathering, my Aunt Jane voiced worries that my mom might be moving too quickly as a way to fill the void left by Dad's death. As my mom began to embrace new changes, altering her hairstyle, updating her wardrobe, and even discarding the garden she and Dad had cherished, I found myself conflicted. Whenever I brought up these changes, she would simply say, "It's time for a new beginning." My father, once a central figure in my mother's stories, has now become a rarely mentioned shadow. The transition occurred swifter than expected when my mom announced that Henry would be moving in with us, just 3 months following my dad's passing. Henry's children, William, aged 25, and Alice, aged 27, supported the idea, believing it would breathe new life into our home. I tried to embrace this change, aiming to honor my father's legacy. However, it felt as though my mom was too eager to erase the traces of Dad's presence. I'm now at a pivotal moment, trying to balance preserving my father's memory without obstructing my mother's pursuit of happiness. My friend Hazel suggested finding a middle ground, yet Dad's words in his last letter resonate deeply with me. "Son, preserve those memories." I regret the delay in updating you all, and thank you for your advice on my previous post. 2 months have passed, and the situation at home has deteriorated. Henry's overbearing nature initially irked me, but now he behaves as if he owns the place. Last month, he started a major renovation without my consent, dismantling the custom-built bookshelves in the living room that my dad and I crafted together. When I confronted him, he dismissively told me that the house needed to be modernized, suggesting that the changes would increase its value. Henry's assertion that no permission was needed for home improvements because he and my mom lived there was a hard pill to swallow, especially when she sided with him. The bookshelves, which once displayed my mom's cherished antique teacup collection during the holidays, now seemed like an inconvenience to her. Furthermore, the dynamic with Henry's children has grown tense. William has converted my dad's workshop into a gym and sold many of Dad's tools during a garage sale while I was away. Alice has taken to redecorating, replacing my father's beautifully restored hardwood floors with modern vinyl. After a family dinner, Henry suggested that since they contribute financially, it would be fair to have their names on the deed. I had to remind him that the house was fully paid for by my father's planning, and they weren't even covering rent, let alone maintenance, insurance, or property taxes. Hazel has since advised that we reduce our visits, given the new baby, Ellie. Taking a step back, however, only seems to embolden Henry further. He started sending me bills for unauthorized improvements. My attempt to discuss my father's intentions and my obligations was dismissed by my aunt, who accused me of living in the past and questioned why I couldn't just let them make the house their own. The final straw came when I discovered that the growth chart marking my height each year from age 3 to 18 had been removed from the kitchen door frame, a tradition my father cherished. Now, I find myself grappling with not only the physical transformation of my childhood home, but also the fading echoes of my father's legacy, questioning how to protect these memories without estranging my family. I understand your need for clarity and simplicity in rewriting the text. Here's a revised, more detailed version that's easier to understand. I couldn't agree to keep every piece of wood just because Dad had once touched it, as Mom argued when I questioned her decision. Since then, I've found solace in the only item I managed to retain, Dad's old chair, now placed in my garage. Mr. Daniel, my advisor, suggested that I start looking into permanent solutions. Legally, the house is mine, but soon I'll need to make some tough decisions about its future. I often wonder, when does standing your ground become more important than honoring Dad's memory? And how do you uphold what's right when your entire family is against you? Thank you for your suggestions on my previous dilemma. They've been immensely helpful. The situation escalated to a critical point, and I made a decision that could change everything. I discussed the house with my financial advisor recently. The rising property values in the area, up by 39% in 2 years, could generate significant rental income, potentially enough to fund Ellie's college education. This revelation came during a conversation with Mom and her partner Henry, where I realized I had overlooked the financial implications of letting them live there without paying rent. Everything unraveled when I mentioned this during our regular call. Mom shouted, "You can't do this to us. This is our home." Despite her protests, I tried to explain my thought process, but she only talked about the improvements they'd made, ignoring that I never approved these changes. Later, Henry called, sounding unusually subdued. He claimed they'd built their life in that house and couldn't just let me take it away, ignoring my attempts to discuss financial matters and claiming they had invested sweat equity. Reminding him that Dad left the house to me for a reason, he coldly replied that Dad wasn't here anymore and I needed to think of the living. I had lengthy discussions with Hazel and Mr. Daniel before deciding to confront them. When I got to the house, I found Mom and Henry tearing out the original crown molding in the dining room, an addition Dad had custom-made to match the house's vintage style. Seeing this, I resolved that they had 1 week to vacate. Mom immediately burst into tears, accusing me of being heartless. Henry attempted to intimidate me, listing their local ties as reasons I couldn't possibly evict them. Despite their emotional tactics, I remained steadfast, as Dad had taught me to be. I asserted my ownership rights, and Henry became defensive about the money they'd invested in renovations. I pointed out that their unauthorized changes had actually lowered the property's historical value. The situation worsened when Alice arrived. Mom used her pregnancy to guilt-trip me, asking how I could do this to my stepsister, who was expecting. Despite the emotional weight, I stood firm, clarifying that Alice's condition didn't alter my property rights, nor was she my stepsister. Since then, Mom's entire family has united against me. Her sister even called me in tears, relaying our grandparents' wish for Mom's security. Henry's brother, a local real estate agent, left messages about the tough rental market, further complicating matters. I've been grappling with a tough situation, one that involves messages about Christian values and family loyalty, surprisingly even from distant cousins whom I barely know. It's particularly challenging to handle longtime family friends who have seen me grow up. They now express disappointment in my decisions, making every conversation feel like a subtle betrayal. Some even accuse me of tarnishing my father's reputation in our community. This isn't about being cruel or seeking profit. It's about fulfilling my father's wishes and protecting his legacy. Watching them slowly erase all traces of him has been painful. The house he left behind was meant to be his lasting mark. Despite covering all their expenses, allowing them to live rent-free, and tolerating unauthorized alterations to the house, I've reached my limit. They have 3 weeks to make new living arrangements, as I can no longer yield to the relentless demands for more time. My lawyer, Mr. Daniel, assures me that the law is on my side, and he is helping me draft the official eviction notices, ensuring everything is meticulously recorded. I understand this might paint me as the antagonist in their stories, but sometimes standing up for what is right means making tough decisions, even if unpopular. This is a lesson I learned from my dad. As the deadline approached, The last 5 weeks have been the hardest of my life, filled with guilt trips and constant emotional manipulation. My mom employed every tactic from fury to tears, reminiscing about the past to sway me. My brother Henry even shifted his approach from intimidation to negotiation, suggesting a formal lease and offering to pay rent. However, I doubted their commitment to maintaining any agreement, given their history with the house. Just days before the deadline, my mom rallied support from church friends, family, and some of my dad's former business partners for a sort of intervention on our front lawn. They came prepared to speak about moral obligations and family duties. I sat through hours of criticism about not honoring my parents. My mom's pastor, my dad's former secretary, and even my elementary school teacher spoke about the values my dad championed. The most intense moment was when Alice, visibly pregnant, expressed how the stress could harm her unborn child, while my mom wept beside her. Amidst this emotionally charged ambush, I found an unexpected calm, almost hearing my dad's advice to stand firm when you're right. Rising to speak, I explained how my dad had meticulously planned to secure his family's future, including building our home himself. I showed the crowd the damage caused by Henry's unauthorized modifications and presented a letter from my dad explaining why he left everything to me. His old business associates understood his message about trust and legacy. After I spoke, the atmosphere changed. While some remained upset, others apologized, and the crowd eventually dispersed. This likely marks my last update on this ordeal. Through these trying times, I appreciate the support and guidance I've received, and I'm prepared to move forward, honoring my father's wishes and preserving what he built with so much care. After Mom and Henry silently walked back into the house, I remained outside with Mr. Daniel and a locksmith, taking extra precautions on the morning of the deadline. Although it seemed unnecessary, I had also arranged for a security team to be present, just in case. The house was now empty, with all of their belongings loaded into Henry's truck. As Henry helped Alice into his pickup, he couldn't resist taking a final jab at me, questioning whether I was pleased with myself and implying Dad would be disappointed in how I treated Mom. I kept silent, confident Dad would have understood, given the clear instructions in his will. Once they drove off, I wandered through the now quiet house. I was struck by the extent of the alterations. Cheap materials had replaced the original fittings, and the unique woodwork Dad and I had painstakingly crafted over many weekends in the workshop was gone. Although I felt a deep sense of loss, I decided against pursuing any legal action. Mr. Daniel had documented everything just in case, but I was more focused on moving forward and restoring what had been lost. I've reached out to some of Dad's craftsman friends who are keen to help restore the original features of the house. Meanwhile, Mom has moved in with her sister, and most of my relatives have cut communication with me, some even criticizing me on social media. Despite this, fewer people are reacting to each new sympathetic post about Mom by Henry's children. Through everything, Hazel has been my rock, reminding me of Dad's letter and his belief in my decision-making. Although Ellie is still too young to understand the full story, one day I'll share with her the legacy her grandfather hoped to preserve. For now, my focus is on the restoration work. With the help of a professional, we aim to honor the spirit of Dad's craftsmanship, even though some things can't be fully brought back. The first project will be the workshop, where I learned so much from Dad, and where I hope Ellie will learn too. Being the antagonist in someone else's narrative is often the price one pays for doing what's right. While I may not be able to mend all the fractured relationships, I find solace in knowing I've safeguarded what Dad entrusted to me. Dad always said, integrity is about doing the right thing, even when it hurts, and not just taking the easy path. I believe he would understand. I'm Eliana. My upbringing was in a typical family setup, with both parents and a younger sister, Chloe. From the outside, it seemed pretty standard and ideal. However, the reality was a bit different, filled with its unique set of challenges, mainly due to my sister Chloe's behavior. Chloe wasn't the easiest child. She had a temper that could ignite at the slightest provocation. Her tantrums were infamous in our household, and they had a way of twisting my parents' arms into appeasing her, no matter the demand. "Eliana, dear," my mom would often say, her voice laced with exhaustion, "could you let Chloe have the last cookie? You know how she gets." And I would comply because, in our house, keeping the peace meant letting Chloe have her way. I grew up learning to be the easy child, the one who smoothed over the rough patches by not making any waves. While Chloe stormed through our lives like a relentless tempest, I retreated into my world of books and academic pursuits, dreaming about a future where I could carve out my own path without any familial drama. This dream turned into a reality when I earned a full scholarship to college. Packing my bags felt like preparing for a voyage to freedom, a mix of exhilaration for what was to come and a twinge of guilt about leaving my parents to manage Chloe on their own. But I reassured myself it was time for me to start my own life. As I loaded my old car with my belongings, my parents offered words of support and pride. "We're so proud of you, Eliana," my mom whispered with a hug. My dad, with moisture glimmering in his eyes, reminded me, "You can always come home if you need to." Chloe watched from the porch, silent and distant. College was a liberating experience. For the first time, I was in a place where I didn't have to walk on eggshells or sacrifice my wants for someone else's needs. I dove into my studies with a fervor, determined to make the most of every opportunity. Back home, life remained unchanged. Chloe ended up marrying her high school sweetheart, Julian, and unsurprisingly, they moved in with my parents. From my occasional phone calls with Mom, I could sense the fatigue hidden behind her hopeful tone. "Chloe and Julian are still settling in. It's nice having the grandkids around," she'd say. Yet, I could tell Chloe was leveraging our parents as her personal childcare and house helper. During one of my rare visits, I overheard Chloe asking our mom to cancel her plans to babysit so she and Julian could enjoy a night out. "It's not like you have anything important to do," Chloe argued dismissively. I saw my mom's shoulders droop in defeat as she agreed. It was infuriating, yet I felt powerless, having chosen to distance myself physically and emotionally from the situation. After college, I secured a position with an international company, starting a new chapter in my life. Despite the geographical and emotional distance, the dynamics at home remained a challenging narrative, a reminder of the complex ties that bind families together. Becoming a manager wasn't a walk in the park. I devoted countless hours, took on additional responsibilities, and went the extra mile to ensure my advancement in the corporate world. My efforts didn't go unnoticed, and within a few years, I found myself leading my department. While my sister, Chloe, relied on our parents for support, I was determined to be self-sufficient. I avoided the allure of a glamorous lifestyle, no extravagant clothes or late-night outings for me. Instead, I focused on building my savings. My first significant purchase was a modest one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't luxurious, but it was all mine. I still vividly remember the overwhelming joy I felt as I stood in the empty living room, key in hand. Next, I bought a car. Nothing fancy, but it was reliable and paid for outright. Throughout this period, I maintained a low profile with little to no social life. My primary focus was on my career and financial stability. That was until I met Jacob. He was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. He didn't try to woo me with lavish dinners or smooth talk. Instead, he engaged me in stimulating conversations, made me laugh, and, most importantly, respected my ambition. "You're something else, Eliana," he remarked admiringly on our third date. His words made me uncomfortable, as I was unaccustomed to praise. "I just know what I want," I replied. He reached for my hand, and I know what I want too. "It's you, Eliana." For the first time in years, I felt my rigid boundaries begin to soften. Perhaps I thought there might be space in my life for more than just work and savings. Jacoby and I continued to see each other, and a few years later, he proposed. Initially, I hesitated. Marriage had never been a priority, given my focus on my career and financial security. But Jacob helped me see past my self-imposed restrictions. The wedding day approached, and despite my initial reservations, I was genuinely excited. But then Chloe arrived at the bridal suite wearing a dress strikingly similar to a bridal gown. "Oh, Eliana," She twirled in her dress. Don't you just love it? I wanted to look my best for your big day. Speechless, I managed to confront her about the appropriateness of her outfit. She appeared confused as our cousins awkwardly agreed with her. Taking a deep breath, I decided not to let her antics spoil my moment. It's fine, I said, refocusing on the mirror. Let's just get this show on the road. The ceremony was beautiful, and the moment I walked down the aisle, I saw Jacob's eyes light up. All the stress and family drama melted away. It was our moment, celebrating our love and the future we were building together. At the reception, however, things took a turn, but that story is for another time. Once, at a wedding, my sister Chloe was mistaken for the bride, and she relished the attention, exclaiming how stunning she looked in her dress. Jacob, my calming force, whispered reassurance, reminding me that I was the true focus of the day. Despite the slight chaos, the wedding was joyous, filled with laughter and dancing. As Jacob and I drove away to our honeymoon, I felt a profound tranquility. Afterward, Jacob and I settled into a comfortable life, moving into his spacious apartment. I decided to keep my old place as a loan officer, seeing it as assistant property manager. Work consumed me, but Jacob was ever supportive, offering late-night coffee or comfort after tough days. However, life wasn't just about work. I began exploring assistant property manager, particularly in securities, embracing the risks and potential rewards. 3 years zipped by, and our savings had grown nicely. One evening, I proposed to Jacob that we buy a vacation home, a retreat for my parents as well, a break from their bustling life managing my sister and her family. We found a stunning lakeside villa just outside the city, featuring a large terrace for cozy bedrooms and a breathtaking view. When we finalized the purchase, I excitedly invited my parents over. My mother's eyes welled up with tears as she took in the new surroundings, overwhelmed by the gesture. My father, equally moved, admired the kitchen's fine details. I suggested we keep the ownership a secret from Chloe, fearing her reaction if she knew the truth. My parents hesitantly agreed. This decision, however, would soon backfire. Days later, my mother called, drained. Chloe had discovered the villa and demanded it be sold to fund her lavish dreams. Despite the tension, my parents stood firm against her demands. The ordeal strained us all, marking the beginning of a tumultuous period stirred by a seemingly innocent lie. She sobbed and told me that they had always loved me more and always favored me. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar mix of guilt and frustration. I'm so sorry, Mom. I never meant to be a burden. It's not your fault, dear, Mom replied, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Your father and I have decided to move to the villa permanently. We just can't handle it anymore. As I ended the call, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. My parents were finally taking a stand, stepping away from Chloe's relentless chaos. Yet, a nagging unease settled in my stomach, knowing this was far from over. Chloe wouldn't take this lying down. On a sunny Saturday, Jacob and I decided to surprise my parents with a visit to the villa. But as we approached, something felt amiss. The air throbbed with loud music, and cars were haphazardly parked on the lawn. As we arrived, the villa was overrun with people drinking, laughing, and children screaming. At the center of it all was Chloe, commanding the crowd as if she owned the place. Her gaze hardened when she saw us. What are you doing here? I scanned the area for my parents. Where's Mom and Dad? Chloe dismissed my question with a wave of her hand. Oh, Mom's out walking the kids, and Dad's gone to get more meat for the barbecue. I was incredulous. You sent them out while you throw parties? It's a celebration, Chloe retorted. We're inaugurating the new family vacation home. Not that you'd understand, Miss Workaholic. My anger simmered. Chloe, this isn't right. She cut me off. Look, Eliana, why don't you and Jacob just leave? Your sour face is spoiling the mood. Speechless, I stood frozen. Jacob gently touched my arm. Let's go, he murmured. As we drove away, the image of Chloe ruling over the villa haunted me, the villa I had purchased for our parents. I can't believe her, I fumed. Using mom and dad like that, treating the place as if it's hers. Jacob sighed. Maybe it's just a one-time thing. But it wasn't. Over the following weeks, Mom told me about the endless parties and gatherings Chloe hosted at the villa. When not partying, she dumped her kids on our parents. The kids are missing school, Mom confessed during one of our calls, sounding utterly drained. Chloe thinks it's no big deal for Owen. He's only 4, but Mila and Logan are falling behind. The next time I saw Chloe, I confronted her. You need to stop exploiting Mom and Dad, I said firmly. They aren't your personal babysitters, and the kids need to be in school. Chloe rolled her eyes, clearly unbothered by my pleas. Eliana, ease up a bit. Mom and Dad do love having the kids around, but the impact it was having on our parents was undeniable. They appeared exhausted and worn out. This was far from the peaceful retirement I had hoped for them when I purchased the villa. After numerous unsuccessful attempts to discuss the situation with Chloe, I made a tough decision and reached out to Child Protective Services. The process was swift and discreet. Chloe received a warning, and suddenly the kids were attending school full-time. The non-stop parties at the villa ceased as well. A few days later, Mom called. Things have settled down, she told me, relief evident in her tone. Your father and I are finally starting to enjoy this place. I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. This was exactly what I had wanted for my parents, a serene retirement sanctuary. However, my relief was fleeting. When I next met Chloe, her gaze was icy with resentment. I know what you did, she hissed. Calling CPS on your own sister? You traitor, Eliana. I will never forgive you for this. Time passed, and soon it was Mom's birthday. Jacob and I planned a surprise weekend visit to the villa, hoping for a quiet family gathering, perhaps a nice dinner on the terrace overlooking the lake. But as we arrived, those hopes were dashed. The villa was in disarray. Music blasted, people swarmed everywhere, and children ran amok. It seemed Chloe had invited nearly half the town. Inside, I found Mom in the kitchen, visibly overwhelmed and close to tears. Happy birthday, Mom, I said, embracing her. She held on a bit too tightly. Oh, Eliana, she murmured. I just wanted a quiet day with family. But Chloe, she invited all these people. Your father and I have been catering to them all day. I stepped outside, intent on finding Chloe. When I did, she was in the midst of laughter with friends. Chloe, we need to talk, I asserted. This is Mom's birthday. She wanted a family day, not this. I gestured to the chaos around us. Chloe just laughed off my concerns. Oh, lighten up. Mom loves having people over. Stop being such a killjoy. Frustrated, I approached a group of guests by the speakers. Excuse me. I raised my voice over the music. Could you please lower the volume? It's too loud. The guests, clearly intoxicated, only laughed and cranked the volume higher. As I stood bewildered, trying to think of what to do next, I caught Chloe conspiring with a group of children, pointing at me and snickering. To my horror, she was handing them ice cream cones, encouraging them to throw them at me. Before I could react, a scoop of ice cream whizzed past my head and struck a woman behind me square in the face. Instant chaos ensued. More ice cream flying, kids screaming, adults shouting. Above the uproar, Chloe's voice rang out, taunting me. Look what you've done, Eliana. You're ruining everything, as usual. Fueled by alcohol and Chloe's provocations, the crowd turned menacing, shouting and advancing towards Jacob and me. With determination in my eyes and fists tightly clenched, I felt Jacob's hand on my arm. Eliana, we need to leave now, he urged. But I couldn't just walk away. This was the house I bought for my parents, a place meant to be their sanctuary. Ignoring Jacob's pleas, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. I'm calling the police, I declared, making sure everyone around could hear. The police arrived swiftly, their sirens piercing the night. As it turned out, our neighbors had already complained about the noise. An officer approached, asking, "Who owns this loan, officers?" I stepped forward confidently. I do. I'm Eliana Johnson. This is my parents' home. But these people, I said, motioning to the raucous crowd, were not invited. The officers wasted no time. They began to clear out the uninvited guests, cautioning them about the legal repercussions of their actions. As the police cars departed with the last of the intruders, a heavy silence enveloped the lone officer. The remnants of the party lay scattered everywhere, empty bottles, tossed aside plates, and an air of lingering unease. Dad. They deserve a peaceful retirement. But as realization dawned on her, Chloe's expression shifted. A sly smile crept across her face. "Oh, Eliana, always the hero," she taunted, moving closer. "Listen, let's brush this incident off. I have a proposal for you." Wary, I raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "This place," Chloe gestured expansively, "has potential. Why don't you let me take over? I could build more houses, rent them out. I'm looking for an assistant property manager. You're already successful. Help your sister out, won't you?" I stood firm. "Absolutely not. This house is for our parents, not for sale or development." Chloe's face twisted with anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed, storming out with her family in tow. Turning to Mom, who appeared stunned, I apologized. "I'm so sorry, Mom. This wasn't how your birthday was supposed to be." Surprisingly, she embraced me tightly. "Oh, honey, thank you for standing up for us. For everything." As I helped Mom clean up, Chloe's threat lingered in my mind. Knowing her well enough, I anticipated she wouldn't let this go. Before Jacob and I left, I made arrangements with a security firm. They installed hidden cameras around the loan officer and set up an alarm system linked to my phone. 3 weeks later, an alert from the security system jolted me. Someone had entered the loan officer. Fearing a false alarm, I called Mom. "Are you and Dad at the villa?" There was a brief pause. "No, honey, we're at our old house. Chloe insisted we come help with the kids. We've been here all week." My heart sank. After a challenging period, I made the tough choice to sever all ties with Chloe. I took legal steps to prevent her from entering the family villa and stopped communicating with her entirely. It was a hard but necessary decision. With Chloe's absence, my parents moved into the villa permanently, and their transformation was astounding. They appeared much younger and more relaxed than they had in years. "We should have done this years ago," my dad mentioned during one of my regular visits. They enjoyed having the grandchildren visit, but appreciated that these were now brief and on their own terms. They had left their previous home to Chloe as a gesture of parental goodwill, making it clear, however, that they would no longer financially support her. It was time for Chloe to be independent. As for me, life was on an upswing. My career was thriving, my relationship with Jacob was better than ever, and then came surprising news. I was pregnant. When I shared the news with Jacob one evening, his joy was uncontainable. He lifted me in a celebratory spin, both of us overwhelmed with laughter and tears. At 3 months pregnant, Jacob and I were eagerly setting up the nursery and poring over parenting books. Though thoughts of Chloe occasionally crossed my mind, I heard she and her husband were constantly at odds, on the brink of divorce. I felt a pang of sadness for her. Yet, a larger part of me felt liberated from the duty of fixing her issues and maintaining peace at my own expense. I was finally focusing on my own happiness.